It was a Tuesday. Clear blue skies, warm September sunshine. People were going to work, and children were going to school. For decades, Americans lived with a basic assumption. The vast oceans on either side of the country provided a natural shield, keeping global violence at a safe distance. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 was deliberately flown into the North Tower of the World Trade Center at 240 miles per hour. The immediate reality was confusion and a massive plume of dark smoke rising over lower Manhattan. 17 minutes later, United Airlines Flight 175 struck the South Tower. Millions of people watching the television coverage saw the mid-air explosion live. The confusion evaporated instantly. Two planes meant this was not a terrible accident. America was under attack. In a span of just over an hour, 3 commercial planes hit their targets in New York and Washington. A fourth crashed into a field in Pennsylvania. By the end of the morning, 2,977 people from 93 different nations were dead. The most powerful military on Earth had been bypassed. A plot 5 years in the making, financed with roughly $500,000 and executed with simple box cutters, defeated the entire defense apparatus of the United States. To understand how a failure of this magnitude occurred, you have to look back to the late 1980s. A wealthy Saudi Arabian named Osama bin Laden founded Al-Qaeda during the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan. The CIA had spent the 1980s channeling weapons and money through Pakistan to support the Afghan resistance. The network that would eventually attack America grew directly out of a conflict the United States helped finance. After the Soviets retreated, bin Laden turned his attention toward the United States, fueled by an opposition to American military presence in Saudi Arabia. He formally declared war on the U.S. in 1996, followed by a 1998 decree calling for the killing of Americans. But he should not have been ignored. In August 1998, Al-Qaeda executed simultaneous bombings against the American embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. 224 people were killed, and thousands more were injured. 2 years later, they attacked the USS Cole, an American Navy destroyer refueling in Yemen. 17 sailors were killed, and the ship was nearly sunk. The organization was escalating its capabilities and targeting American military assets with increasing precision. 1 month before September 11th, President George W. Bush received a direct intelligence briefing at his ranch in Texas. The document was titled, "Bin Laden Determined to Strike in U.S., and it detailed Al-Qaeda's surveillance of federal buildings in New York. Despite these warnings, 19 hijackers entered the United States legally on valid visas. They exploited the relaxed domestic aviation security of 2001 and enrolled in American flight schools. They focused exclusively on learning how to steer commercial aircraft mid-flight. They had no intention of landing. The government possessed the intelligence and the history of escalation. The failure was a systemic inability to communicate those warnings across different agencies, leaving a gap wide enough for a low-tech plot to defeat the most advanced defense apparatus on Earth. While the national defense systems failed, ordinary people stepped up immediately. On United Airlines Flight 93, passengers used seatback phones to call their families. They learned about the strikes in New York and Washington, and quickly realized their plane was being used as a weapon. They held a vote in the cabin and chose to fight back. Aware they were losing control, the hijackers crashed the aircraft into a field in Pennsylvania at 583 miles per hour. Everyone aboard died, but their actions saved the intended target, almost certainly the U.S. Capitol or the White House. Back in New York, jet fuel fires were reaching over 1,000 degrees. Thousands of trapped office workers desperately tried to escape down the stairwells. Emergency responders were doing the exact opposite. They ran upward into the heat and smoke, carrying heavy gear toward the impact zones. That bravery came with a staggering physical cost. When the buildings collapsed, 343 firefighters were killed. It remains the largest single-day loss of life in the history of the New York City Fire Department. September 11th revealed a stark contrast. The top-down institutions designed to protect the country failed completely. But at the ground level, The immediate crisis was met by the courage of ordinary individuals who responded to catastrophe with everything they had. The government's reaction was a massive bureaucratic expansion. Homeland Security was created. The Patriot Act expanded surveillance, and everyday travel was forever altered, with full body scanners and shoe removal at airport checkpoints. This timeline charts the 2-decade military response in Afghanistan and Iraq. The financial cost ballooned to over $8 trillion. Yet this yielded a devastating reality: hundreds of thousands killed. And in 2021, the Afghan government collapsed as the Taliban returned. Back home, the wounds remain open. The 9/11 Commission published a report describing in clinical detail exactly how the intelligence apparatus failed. And today, families of the victims are still in court, seeking full legal accountability for the attacks. A measure of delayed closure arrived 10 years later when American Navy SEALs raided a compound in Pakistan and killed Osama bin Laden. The America that existed on September 10th is gone. It was replaced by a massive security state and 20 years of global conflict. But underneath the institutional failures, the true legacy of the day remains the resilience of the people who ran into burning buildings and the passengers who voted to fight back.